It's Thanksgiving week. It's Haberman and MIDDLEKAUFF. Welcome. I'm Guy. That's John. It's our YouTube channel and our podcast. We're glad you're here. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch and you only listen, there's a YouTube link in the description. If you want to listen and you only watch, there's a podcast link in the YouTube description. And we're brought to you by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Back at it. It is Monday morning after a late Sunday show. And it's a good week for Tito's, John.
I just looked at my fridge, a little low, though I got some family, my mom, brother, sister-in-law, kids coming. While me and Jeff, I think I'm going to have to go reload because we're a little low on the Tito's. So some Tito's and absolutely everything you can think of, mix it on in.
Little Jeff likes a lot of Tito's. Tito's Handmade Vodka. Take it with you to Thanksgiving. Have it in your house when people are coming over for Thanksgiving. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. It's not just Thanksgiving. The football. Obviously, the Niners play Thursday. We got a Black Friday NFL game this week.
Egg Bowl Thursday night also.
Egg Bowl Thursday night. Ton of good college games this weekend, so it's a big football weekend.
Do you see the 3 lines on the Pac-12 games that impacted the championship games?
This week?
I guess Washington's in, right?
Washington's in. Oregon State.
I think they're an enormous favorite, and I think Arizona and Oregon are both double-digit favorites. I think it's like 14 and 12.5. Like all 3 lines are close to multiple touchdowns.
It's like 11, 12, 13 or something like that. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's usually not that easy. Like you said, UW's in, but it's a rivalry game. And for Oregon, they gotta win. If Arizona's going to win, Oregon's got to win to get into the Pac-12 title game. So Arizona needs a win and an Oregon win, and they're in.
This is the one thing college sports has just the players are kind of irrelevant this week. I mean, they are relevant, especially in like Michigan, Ohio State, but just Mississippi State versus Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss is like a top 12 program. None of it matters. Like historically, you throw it all out the window.
Fired or was gonna? I mean, did the coach get fired? No, he's just not gonna make it.
Yeah, and he just, I mean, was kind of handed a weird situation, right? With Mike Leach dying in the offseason. So just I would imagine we get one of these big rivalry games. Something weird happens. I also hit me our guy. I hate saying this because I want Derek Ray to be the GM of a team that goes to the playoffs. But do you remember when we were young? Might have been high school, might have been like our first year in college. And the Cincinnati Bearcats, who at the time were not like Kentucky or Kansas or North Carolina.
You're talking about football?
I'm talking about basketball.
Oh, okay.
They were undefeated.
I was going to say, I don't remember them in football when we were
young. And Kenyon Martin shattered his leg. And they were like going to be the lock number 1 seed. And they got bumped to a 2.
Yep.
Is it inconceivable over these next 2 weeks, even if they win out? Like, because in basketball, and I know you'd still make the tournament, it would impact your seeding if you lose your star quarterback team captain. Like, what if this quarterback that comes in, even if you win the next 2 games, I think they play Florida this week, and then they play Louisville, which would be a good win because I think they're like 10th. But what if it's like, this is not the same team? The guy fucking had his ankle pointed like this. Did you see the highlight?
Yeah, I saw it. It was bad.
I saw Aaron Murray tweeted out that he's like, it happened to me in high school, and you don't in your head feel the pain. You just look at your leg, and it's this bizarre feeling. It's hard to comprehend what's going on, though you know what's going on. It's a weird, you're not screaming in pain. You're just kind of sitting there looking.
In disbelief, probably. In fear. I mean, you're probably terrified. Speaking of rivalry games, this will be the 51st all-time meeting between the Niners and the Seahawks on Thursday night, John. Do you know what the series record is? The historical series record. Keep in mind, real quick, before you answer that, Seahawks, historically one of the worst franchises in the history of the league before they got good under Pete Carroll.
Played in the AFC for a long time, right?
Yep. Niners, one of the great franchises in all of sports.
Well, yeah, they had a couple years there in the mid-2000s, and obviously Pete has been very, very successful. I do feel for a long period of time, it's why the bet yesterday was Rams, right? There's this weird ownership in this conference or in this division with the cross teams. Even Arizona, I think, used to give Seattle fits, right? The Rams beat Seattle. Seattle owns the Niners. The Niners owns the Rams. There's like this wheel of life. I would feel Pete's racked up a lot of wins against San Francisco 49ers.
Yes. Seattle leads the all-time series 30-20. The Niners have won 3 straight. Before that, they'd lost 4 in a row. Seattle went on a stretch at one point where they were 15-2 against the 49ers. 15-2. We know Russ dominated. We're coming up on the
those are against good 49er teams, right?
It's good teams.
Harbaugh.
Yeah. 2014 was Thanksgiving, John, remember? Midfield at the 50 on the logo. Richard Sherman, Michelle Tafoya, Russell Wilson, breaking bread. They're breaking turkey. And
Russell now wears Niner hats on his podcast, I saw. So he's come over.
Yeah, I saw a clip today on Twitter. He said if Brock was a top 5 pick, he'd be the face of the league with Patrick Mahomes.
They easily, the year the 49ers went to the Super Bowl, could have swept them. I mean, they beat them at home on Monday night in 2019. I was at that game. Remarkable insanity of a football game. Remember the backup kicker because Gold had gotten hurt, who was like signed from the UFL and shanked a game winning kick. Didn't even
wasn't
get close.
Joey. What's his name? Who's on the football?
No,
team,
it's not an NFL. No, it's not an NFL player.
Okay.
Like you've never heard of him. And then the Dan Buns Greenlaw. I mean, they easily could have been swept that season on a team that was absolutely eviscerated people in the playoffs and were winning the Super Bowl with like 5 minutes left.
Yep.
So Seattle, this is lost a little luster to me watching them play the Rams. Now, granted, it was kind of hit me. Don't really like LA Rams home games during the day. Something's just off on that stadium with them at home. It doesn't quite work, even though the stadium is magnificent. Something's just weird there. I couldn't put my finger on it. It didn't resonate.
Feels like September, not November.
Part of that, maybe it's the lighting.
I feel like it's the lighting.
Well, like there's a darkness, for example, in the dome of like Indy or Arizona. You can't really tell dark night. It's just a football game going on. That because it's open, the light, it's weird. Something's off. Kind of
Dallas,
the Cowboy Stadium when we were a kid, it used to be way more aggressive, I think, the previous stadium than the new one.
You talking about Dallas?
I'm saying the old Dallas Stadium. Remember, like the light would shine in, really like baseball style.
Yes.
I don't feel it's as aggressive now.
No, it's not. The contrast isn't as bad, but it comes in from like the window. It comes in from like the sides instead of from the top now in Dallas. Because Mike McCarthy always manages to throw the ball to a receiver looking into the sun on a big third down. I remember he did that a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I guess I like the Rams and Chargers at home at night or just on the road. They're easy to consume. Like yesterday, Chargers-Packers morning game, easy to consume. That game afternoon at home feels a little different. But on the road, it's like it just pops. It just works.
Did you see the hit that Stafford took? I mean, we talked about on Sunday night the hit that Geno took. Stafford got destroyed also. Like Stafford Lions level destroyed.
Well, that's another element of this game. There's
100%. It's going to be cold.
There's a violence, I think, watching football yesterday of division games. Bears-Lions, like the Bears showed up ready to fucking kick some ass. The Giants rolled in with Tommy DeVito, Commanders. We're going to kick your ass. There's just like no one looks at, there's Deebo Samuel, you know? Not just like the Niners, like DK Metcalf, but it's just with division games, all these players have played each other now, especially on these two teams. Like how long has DK and Tyler Lockett and these guys been on the Bobby Wagner, who's back? Even now Geno's been there a couple years, and he was the backup before, so he's just used to seeing these guys on tape. That's what's cool about division games. Like, I'll guarantee you this. When the 49ers play, have they already played Arizona?
No.
They have not?
No. The Niners? Or
Yeah.
the Seahawks? The Niners have not played the Cardinals.
I feel like one of those games is going to get weird. It's going to get
especially with Kyler back now.
Yeah.
The Niners,
he's going to play in wacky games, but
he's going to play what? Oh, in wacky games.
He's just going to play. He's just going to make shit weird, I feel, this year on opponents.
Oh,
because I
did play the Cardinals. What planning on? I tell me something about that game. I don't remember, John.
What week?
Week 4.
Yeah, I don't really remember that. Either.
Oh, was that it was Dobbs. Yeah. I don't know how that one. A lot's happened since the Niners beat the Cardinals because they beat the Cowboys the next week. Then they lost 3 games in a row.
They play the Cardinals.
I was pretty confident they had not played the Cardinals.
Maybe it won't get as weird. I think they played last week.
Yeah, I don't know. I was positive they had not played the Cardinals. Lots happened since October 1st in the world of the Niners.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Anyway, we're not used to 10 a.m. Pacific shows. And I think the other thing about this game, you said it on Sunday night, it is for Seattle, it's a borderline must-win game, right? Given that now they're a full game back. You lose the game, you're 2 back in the division. Just from a divisional standpoint, the wild card's still there for them. But if they want to win if the Seahawks win this game, all of a sudden they're in the driver's seat again in the NFC West.
I would imagine if you're them, it's hard because you don't know the exact seeding. I think the 6 and 7 seeds are going to just have tough games. It's going to be some combination of Niners, Eagles, right? Lions. Now, the Seattle beat the Lions. I would imagine they feel the best matching up against them. Like, to me, they have no shot on the road against the Eagles or the Niners. It's like the 7-2.
Right.
If you told me that Pete Carroll went into Detroit and it was a tie game going in the fourth quarter, it's very believable. Even though we've learned historically, like, regular season games you have to throw out sometimes in postseason matchups. Like, they don't, just because one team beat them by 10 or 20 or over, it doesn't carry over, especially when you're talking about a game. I think the Lions in Detroit, they played each other like week 2 or 3. I mean, so if you play January 12th, you're going to have several players in different spots. Hell, the Seattle just elevated Jason Peters, who's a 42-year-old practice squatter, to their regular lineup. But to me, now, listen, the Niners got to win this game to just talk about them as some locked divisional winner. We talked about this yesterday after the game. They win this game. I just don't see how they don't win the division because Seattle will blow another game. When I say blow, they could just lose another game. They're not going to. I haven't even looked at their schedule, but they're going to be underdogs in games, right?
Well, I mean, they what they are when you watch them, I think what they are is a borderline wild card team. Like, that's who they are, right? Doesn't mean they can't play you well. Doesn't mean you can't get beat by them. Doesn't mean they won't do sweet shit. But I do think that's who they are. Is a wild card-ish team.
In a good conference, they are not a lock for the playoffs. In this NFC, if Geno can play, how do they, they just get to go to the playoffs like last year? I think they're a little better this year than last year, right? Their players are just, they have some younger players.
They started so hot last year, though, that they put themselves in good shape. Remember, Geno was like an MVP for half the year.
But even if they lose this guy and they're 6-5, like who?
Yeah, you're right. Jordan Love's not going to the playoffs.
The Vikings right now are the 7. Like, yeah, it's a fun story, and he's an incredible. Like, it's fun to watch and root for Joshua Dobbs, but they easily can lose every game they play in as well, right? Like, the Vikings are just as. If the Vikings go 8-9, it's very understandable. I saw someone tweet out, like, can you imagine having the Vikings under this year? Cousins tears his Achilles. Justin Jefferson has been gone forever. And you're like, I'm not only sweating this out, I'm probably going to lose it. It's pretty crazy.
What was the number?
I think like 7.5 or 8.5 or 7.5.
Yeah, so they're 6-5. So would you say 8-9? Like, that'd be 4-4 down the stretch. That'd be, I'm sorry, 2 and you say 8-9? So 2-4 down the stretch. Yeah. The Raiders would be the 8 seed in the NFC right now.
Yeah, the NFC after the top, I would say the top 4 teams is not very good.
Right.
And Dallas is one of those teams as a wild card. Yeah.
Yeah, Dallas.
Who will be a favorite right on the road? Yeah. A heavy favorite.
How about this stat? I was just looking at Deebo. Deebo, this is 5th year in the league. This will only be his 6th career game against the Seahawks, including the playoffs. Last year in the playoffs, he had 6 for 133 and a touchdown and 3 carries. So he for 30 yards. So he had basically 9 touches for 165 yards and a touchdown against Seattle. Deebo's been kind of, I don't want to say absent. Obviously, he was absent for 2 games. Kittle played well again. Deebo has 9 total targets in the last 3 weeks. He has 12 total targets in the last 5 games. But his career against the Seahawks, John, is 9 targets per game. Short week. Holding Deebo back a little. Maybe he's getting healthier by the week. You use him a lot against the Seahawks. Maybe it's a Deebo week this week. Deebo feels fit for short week kind of divisional games. And I kind of feel like this will be his game on Thursday night.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, I feel like when I close my eyes and think about Seattle, I think Kittle and Deebo. Definitely Kittle. Like they're secondary to me. I mean, I don't see how they really cover the 49ers. Now you could argue, I mean, they got a couple guys that are hard. There's a lot of good skill players in this game. Kenneth Walker's been banged up, but like I think they would say, well, who the fuck's covering DK Metcalf? Your best corner ain't covering him. And our second guy, none of those cats are covering Lockett. So maybe it's got to be one of those like 35 to 24 games. I feel like Seattle's going to score some couple points. Like, right? I don't envision this thing to be some absolute blowout where they don't score points.
Well, what do you think they're doing this week? They're looking at where's Jair Brown going to be, right? That's got to be a big part of Seattle's game plan. Hufunga's out. Shanahan confirmed it Monday morning, ACL. John just did prayers up.
That hurts.
And, all of a sudden, Jair Brown now gets a short week for his first NFL start against a team with the one thing you say about Seattle, they throw the deep ball really well.
Yeah.
And speed is not the Niners' thing in the secondary, with the exception of Ambry. So, like, there is a recipe for Seattle.
I would say that, I mean, is this a Deebo Christian McCaffrey carry game as well?
Yeah, could be.
And part of the Deebo, touches / targets are just quick screens. That definitely feels like something that they haven't done as much lately. Is the quick screen game? I guess they haven't really needed it the last 2 weeks.
He hasn't done much lately,
but they haven't thrown him the ball.
That's what I mean. He hasn't touched the ball.
Yeah, but they haven't really needed him the last 2 weeks, and he missed all the games that they did need him with the shoulder injury. It just all of a sudden was broken. Now it's just fine. Bizarre injury. I don't question his toughness, but a little weird, the whole thing, I thought.
It was.
And listen, if you live in society, don't trust anyone in public situations. Never trust NFL teams. I'm not saying they lied to us. I'm just saying something was off. Something was off. It doesn't.
You think he wasn't hurt?
No, I don't think we know
what it was.
I don't know. Okay. He was injured, or else he would have played. I'm just saying it doesn't quite add up. He just had a broken bone, and then he was just able to come back, and he's completely fine. Or is he not completely fine, and that's why they're being careful? But if you're playing him at any moment, he'd get into a collision. I don't know. It's just with injury stuff, like clearly Trent Williams, like, a little ankle, and then it was clearly a lot worse, right? And even Trent's like, God,
even Kyle
hasn't felt right. Even Trent said, like, I was not 100% in the first game back last week, even though moving around, he's just such a freak. I just think sometimes the Niners are good about being honest about this guy's in or out, unlike the Bengals, who like completely hid Joe Burrow's injury. I just don't always know if we're getting the full scope, which like something was weird about that situation. Yeah. Again, it was weird the week that he was announced, like he's just out for the next couple of weeks with a broken bone. Like, what? What are you guys talking about? And then we
can never find the play. That was the other thing, right? We never saw the play that he got hurt on.
And then it just completely heals, and now he's cool. Like, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, we're talking like 2.5 weeks.
Maybe he's still getting shots.
Yeah. So maybe they've just been careful about using him because they know he's not one of those guys. He's just going to find contact if the ball is in his hands. Like when I think of the Seattle playoff game, I think of that play down the sideline last year where he breaks. Like he's just kind of looking for contact to break a tackle and then take it to the house. Now, if he gets in space, he'll avoid you, but he just sometimes finds he's like George. If they're going to play, you have to assume contact is going to come around. Like Aiyuk is actually a good example of a guy that you feel pretty good about. Like his health, he would get hurt on like to me, his injury would not be a collision because he's so good at like doing the Lamar hits the ground. He's not trying to prove
going into the ground this year, right? The shoulder was kind of him
diving for a ball.
Yeah.
But like yesterday, the play where he
stayed in bounds. Was the initial thing diving or was it like falling down on a tackle into the turf? Remember that he came back in and he dove and it got worse. Was the first injury diving also?
Yeah, he was just reaching out and the guy fell on him.
Okay.
But I'm saying he doesn't take, like he gets tackled, but he's not looking to go through you. He goes around and then he hits the ground.
And he steps out. Yeah.
I think it's a really good skill he has. Like no one questions your toughness, right? No one on this team's questioning people's toughness. Let's play smart. And like there's a reason Travis Kelce's going to play till he's 37. And like it's going to be hard pressed to see George at 34 playing at this level, right? Look at Gronkowski. It's just hard to play. Deebo, the way he ages. Now, in the moment, let's let it rock and roll. But it's hard to me to play through shoulder injuries when you're a violent player.
About 50 catches for 700 yards in his career, Kittle, against the Seattle Seahawks, by the way. Speaking of Aiyuk, we both saw this. I saw it on Lombardi tweeted it, that Aiyuk was talking to the media on Sunday, and George Odom yelled, $20 million guy. And Trent Williams walked by and said, 25. Maybe, I mean, who knows if you become a true free agent, what happens? Doesn't feel like it would get to that point, but they would trade him before then.
Yeah.
But he's been, you said it yesterday, like, look at where he is in yards. I think he's top, what did I see today? Top 15 in yards in the NFL? Because he's way down in catches, right?
And he missed a game. Yeah, I think. So, I mean, I think the reality is really, I really enjoy him as a player. But when you just look at the finances, when you look at some of the big picture team needs, when you look at investing into multiple wide receivers at a huge number, it's just not really feasible. It's just not. And ultimately, like you'd be like, well, you could just keep him over Deebo. Well, Deebo's value, right? You're not getting it back. Like you could trade Brandon Aiyuk to a team in the 20s and they would extend him, right? And get a star player and give him 5 for 100 and, guarantee him $70 million. I just have a hard time seeing the 49ers doing that. They have a lot of other high price guys. If this was Eddie DeBartolo days, he'd go nowhere. You would just pay him the cap. There's no cap. To me, it's just not realistic. The way that I think Kyle's proven that they want to build their team. And he's been open about it. John Lynch has been open about it. Part of the reason they get along is one guy's a safety, the other guy's former wide receiver, but they value the trenches. Like they really do. And let's face it, the trenches cost a lot.
And they traded the trenches, right? They loved DeForest Buckner as much as they love Brandon Aiyuk, and he plays a more premium position, and they traded him. So if they're willing
but they immediately replaced him with the trenches.
They thought, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that was their mindset.
Right.
Like it's not even inconceivable that they trade Brandon Aiyuk and use one of their picks on a lineman and another pick on a receiver. Because it's just
that cheaper. Would be the difference, right? Is to replace DeForest Buckner in theory with somebody physically, at least in his realm. You've got to draft in the top 15. You don't necessarily have to do that to find a number one receiver. Aiyuk, by the way, 10th in the NFL in yards. Despite 43 catches, nobody else in the top 10 has less than 59 catches.
I think one of their great regrets is because we had Mike McGlinchey, who at the time was never going to get re-signed, right? They knew he was playing his way out of it. Thank God. Tristan Wirfs yesterday, when he limped off the field and Moose goes, one of the only guy in the NFL who hasn't given up a sack this year. I was like, oh my God. He's been playing right tackle. He's playing left tackle. If you redid that draft, I'd have to look at it. He goes top 2 or 3. What's the value that player has? It's got to be one of the great draft picks in Tampa Bay history to get that guy at 14, who's a star right tackle and then immediately goes to left tackle and is going to be your stalwart. He's your Trent Williams.
Would you say if he becomes what he becomes, in every draft he goes top 6, like in any draft you could find, top 7?
If you know exactly what he's going to become, beside the Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa's and quarterbacks, there's nobody you take over. And honestly, depending on the team and maybe the coach and who you have on your team,
right?
If you already had Nick Bosa, you would immediately just take the tackle. They're a drafts guy. He would go number 1 overall.
Yeah.
Because you look back,
to your point, depending on the team, if let's say the Bengals are drafting 4th in a QB, they would just take him, right?
Well, there aren't always quarterbacks. I guess now there probably is going to be, just the way sport is. But in some of the drafts where there haven't been a quarterback go number 1 overall, a Trent Williams, Trent Williams, people knew he was going to be good. He went 4th. Lane Johnson 4th. There have been offensive tackles that go really high. Wirfs was actually the 3rd or 4th. Mekhi Becton went above Wirfs. But it's so easy to play this game. At the time, no one knew he was going to be this good. And he is. But no different Aiyuk. If you could redo the draft, Aiyuk's not sitting there at 27. Now, he's not going 4, but he'd easily go in the teens. I'm watching the Denver Broncos last night. Like, he's dramatically better than Jerry Jeudy. It just shows you, like, once you get to the NFL, like, part of Sherman's argument about Purdy is, like, there's not a soul that you could have argued in a draft room on television to be like, Brandon Aiyuk's better than Jerry Jeudy. People are like, what the fuck are you talking about? But then 3 years later, it's not even a question. There's not one team in the NFL. There's not one fantasy owner. There's not one fan. There's nobody.
Sean Payton.
Would Sean Payton included would have done that trade yesterday, would take Jerry Jeudy over Brandon. But things change after a couple years.
Micah says, Purdy and Aiyuk is a magic duo. You don't get rid of your QB's favorite target. What the fuck's wrong with you guys? Maybe they won't.
Well, I agree. There's an argument.
Maybe they won't. Maybe they will find a way. Maybe they will pick Brandon over somebody else.
George.
They love him. But George is hard to replace. He just had another great game. Like,
well, I'm just throwing out names. Like,
I know.
You're not getting rid of McKivitz. I mean, it's a money
Warner?
game. There's a puzzle. No. So, like, okay, it's like, well, Charvarius isn't on the team next year at his number. What are they just going to play with corners with the group they have? I mean, like, they're going to have to buy one of those. It just gets very complicated. I'm not pushing this guy out the door.
I know.
I would keep the guy on my team, but it's a puzzle, right?
It is.
And it's easy to be like, on paper, we trade him for and plug in so-and-so player from the draft. And then 2 years later, you're like, what the fuck did you just do? Or maybe it's like, yeah, we got rid of Stephon Diggs, but we got Justin Jefferson, which feels like an outlier situation.
Who was the Deebo guy? Remember who's the guy the Titans got? It was like, oh, this guy does everything Deebo does.
Yeah, Arkansas Burks.
Then it turns out he has like asthma.
And he's just not good.
Remember, he couldn't get. It's like, oh, this is. Immediately it was bad. Like, immediately, like, he can't get on the practice field. Remember, they had like some undrafted receiver was getting more reps than him in the first practice.
Yeah.
And that was going to be the guy.
I even give you a little bit of a pass. Football's really hard. Devontae sucked. I'll throw away any guy's rookie year, right? But I mean, we're a couple years in on that guy's career. It's like, this ain't going to work.
Yeah. What is that guy's name?
Traylon Burks.
Traylon Burks. Yeah. Thanks.
But I think this is the problem with a Deebo. A lot like a Draymond Green, a lot like some baseball player that can play like 7 positions and is actually good at, like a Max Muncy or something who can actually do it, or Mookie Betts. Most guys cannot. So it's so easy to project that, and then in reality, you're like, you have like a bias in your head hoping it's going to happen. The outlier situations are just that. Like watching Kyler Murray, like one of my big picture takes is the chance that Caleb Williams is as good as Kyler Murray. We can say whatever we want about Kyler, that's COD, and I'm watching him fly around, and I text a buddy with the Texans. He's like, that guy was a motherfucker to play. His second game back from an ACL injury. There's just no human way that he's 100% like he was 2 years ago in the middle of the season or something. And he just is a different animal. Like that, the speed, the arm, at any moment, and I don't even know who he's playing with. Like, who are these guys? And he just looks like one of the most gifted guy on the field. And he's tiny, but it's like, what are the chances that Caleb is just immediately as impactful as him? Yeah. Whether his coach is good or bad, probably slim to none, right? History would show you.
Well, when he's on the Bears with Lincoln Riley, which is my new prediction, they'll hit the ground running immediately offensively.
See, I don't know. Not that he won't go to the Bears.
Just
Lincoln.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Are we sure Lincoln's team just tapped out?
I just thought of a tweet. I saw somebody said like USC pulling off the traditional preseason top 10 to Sun Bowl. It's a big part of their program's history. Draymond the exception. Turns out you can't find another Draymond. Remember, it was like Denzel Valentine, the next Draymond. I'm pretty sure he's coaching. Denzel Valentine's like a college basketball head coach right now. Maybe like Loyola Chicago, or maybe that's a different guy. But anyway,
I think we might could be wrong. Oh, you're right. What? It was someone else. I thought Denzel Valentine had passed away. But that was another Michigan State guy.
Okay. Whew, thanks for checking. Draymond, couldn't find him. Kobe died. Everyone's got mama mentality. Bullshit. No, you don't. You don't have mama mentality. And I think it happened again. It drove me nuts this last year. It's like Brock Purdy, he's changing the way everyone's going to draft quarterbacks. Like, okay, well, good luck with that. Go ahead and draft. Go ahead. Draft the short guy with a moderate arm over the great athlete. Let me know how that turns out.
Well, that's the Rams. Stetson Bennett. He's in fucking the Betty Ford, right?
John, it's you're not fine. It doesn't. It just these are the exceptions to the rules. And you and I have been, I think, pretty even tempered on Brock because yesterday I saw somebody said we're slow playing it. I think we've been on the right number with Brock. And so I say that because I don't want to jump too far ahead here. But I think tonight is a big night. If you're listening to this after Monday night, I think this take holds up depending on what happens. It's Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts in a massive game on Monday Night Football. Games that are big for those teams individually, games that are big because it could be another Super Bowl matchup, and they just did. Games that are big in their individual conference races. And it's a big MVP night. And when you really look at like what is the NFL MVP race right now? Well, Josh Allen, you always think is going to be there, but he's throwing a ton of picks. His team's not playing well. Herbert, who's got the talent, team's not good enough. It's not going to be Dak. It's not going to be Tua. Kirk Cousins, no, he's out. Mahomes, of course. I mean, Mahomes and Jalen Hurts are just always going to be there. Right now, Mahomes has 200 fewer yards and one less touchdown pass than Brock. And I'm not suggesting that Brock is a major dark horse relative to the way the MVP usually works. CJ Stroud, same numbers. People are talking about him. Jared Goff.
He threw 3 picks yesterday.
Yeah, and his team's not going to be good enough. And Goff, his team is good enough, but he's not. When you watch him, you don't think I'm watching the MVP. Burrow's out of it. Hurts right now is like Mahomes. Like all it takes is a few good weeks, and he is back to being the MVP. Lamar's got 12 touchdown passes. So we haven't had a running back win it in forever. And there's still a long way to go because we just hit November. There's 2 big months of crunch time football to be played. Mahomes could still run away with this thing. But I do think this is a big night, and it's still wide open. And I think the odds that a 49er wins the MVP this year, if they win a bunch of games here down the stretch and the rest of the league plays the way they've been playing, is good. But the odds that Mahomes doesn't or Hurts doesn't just blow up here the last 2 months in a positive way are not good. Like that's who those guys are. But
I would say Lamar's not totally dead, given
I agree with that.
Because he's got 530 yards rushing.
Right.
He's got another 5 touchdowns there. So if he gets around the 10 and around 850 to 1,000 yards rushing and his team goes 14-3, I would say he'd have. This bothers me a little bit. The same thing with the Heisman Trophy. Is it just a quarterback award? Because I do think there are. I don't know college football as well in terms of like, is there a positional player who would have a legit gripe? I saw someone arguing like Marvin Harrison's going to win the Blitnikoff. He hasn't had fucking 50 yards in a game in like 3 weeks. It's like, it's just on name. Obviously, he's the best wide receiver, but it's also part of winning that award was like Jordan Addison won. His stats were incredible, right? It's like your stats have to match up. We know you're good. You're going to go high, but your stats have to match it.
Yep. And the problem is that guy's quarterback usually, like Rome Odunze at Washington. Well, it's Michael Penix just has incredible numbers. I know the running back at Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon. I saw RG3 had him like number 2 on his Heisman list a couple of weeks ago.
I don't know what the stats are for the wide receiver at Florida State. He's been incredible, Coleman. Yeah. But my point is that for the NFL, like to me right now, my vote would easily be Myles Garrett. I think he's the best player in the NFL. And we've seen this a couple times, and the guy doesn't even feel like he got close, right? Like Aaron Donald definitely had 1 year. I was like, I think this guy should win the MVP. And J.J. Watt definitely had that. Now, I think Aaron's team was better. Remember, J.J. played on like 9 and 7 teams that would win like wild cards or even win that division when it was really shitty. But it was like, if you went, I remember going to a Raider game going, this guy's fucking unstoppable. Like sacks, TFLs, PBUs, touchdowns. Like this is, and that's what it feels like. I have no problem when a quarterback goes 45 touchdowns and his team wins, the number 1 seed. Okay. It's like, I'm all for it. I do think this is a year where I'd be stunned if Myles Garrett doesn't get in the mix. Now, I don't know if there's necessarily another player. Tyreek Hill's kind of come back to earth a little bit statistically. I would say AJ Brown. What if AJ Brown has like 3 touchdowns tonight? You could argue that he's the MVP on that team.
Yeah, I think it's just really hard for the non-quarterback. To your point, JJ finished second in the voting in 2014, 13 votes. Aaron Rodgers had 31 votes. The last defensive player to win it was 86. Was 1986. So I just think the odds aren't good. I think McCaffrey's got a shot because people watch Christian a lot in big games, and it looks like when you're watching him, he's carrying them. Look at
what was the year you said with Rodgers? Was it 14?
14, yeah. And DeMarco Murray finished third, so he actually went quarterback, defensive player, running back that year.
He was 38 and 5.
What did JJ do that year? I wonder what his JJ had 20 and a half sacks.
I guess the way that voter would justify it, like Myles Garrett a lock to win the defensive player of the year this year? Like he would have to get injured at this rate. It feels like,
right.
JJ Watt, Aaron Donald, they just rack up the defensive player of the year. And I think people would say, well, that is technically their MVP because that is a great thing to have. Like both Aaron Donald and JJ Watt, why are they going to be first ballot Hall of Famers? Because they go, we've won the defensive player of the year 3 times, right?
Right. Which is it's an MVP level award, right? It's hard to beat out quarterbacks.
It's hard to beat out quarterbacks.
Now this year might be a year. To your point,
yeah.
Like this year might be a year where like Mahomes is to this.
He's not going to throw enough touchdowns. He's just not. They're not.
But he might have moments. There's still 2 months left. Like there's a lot of football left for these guys to play.
But he's already won a couple, and the bar for him's pretty high in terms of the numbers. That would be the thing.
I think it's open. I think you look up at McCaffrey. He leads the league in touchdowns right now, and he leads the league in rushing. He's got 14 touchdowns with 2 months still to play this season. I mean, what if he scores 27 touchdowns, 25 touchdowns?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an MVP level player. I guess my point is I'm all for not giving it to a quarterback if there is not like some no-brainer. Because I'm watching this year, to me, there's not some no-brainer. You could argue if Brock was in his 5th year and had been doing this for a while, he would have more momentum. That's one thing where Richard is right, and Jeff Schwartz has argued this forever. We all talk about on the outside draft status is irrelevant once you're in the league. It does impact stuff. It impacts the way we talk about you early on. It impacts the chances you get early on in your career. Now, eventually, like Carson Wentz ran out. Like no one cares where he was drafted the last couple of years, right? It's kind of it gets to a point. There's a line, but Purdy is still fighting this 7th rounder, really good team. If it was year 5, that is irrelevant. Like Zach Wilson, people just evaluating. No one gives a fuck where he was picked anymore. It's like he just evaluated everyone's as a player now, but he was, he's several years removed from being picked.
But I want to say something about that. The Sherman, Jeff Schwartz, the thing you just said, because it is correct. I think when people talk about it though, they act like it's 100% flawed. I don't think it's 100% flawed. Like there is a reason for that. And it's not just that it's easier for us to think about you as a top 5 pick as a great player. Part of it is when you're a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick, you have elite talent. And most of the great players are elite talent, are total package guys. Now you look up, you go, well, was Brady an elite talent? Well, people would argue, no, he wasn't athletically one, but I'll tell you what, his deep ball looks as good as anybody's. Like his arm was pretty freaking good, right? Montana, not elite. He wasn't, there are much less elite, far less talented guys behind Montana in career success. And that's true. But I do think there's just something to the eye test. Part of it with Zach would not just be where he was drafted. When you watch him, he does have elite physical traits. He throws the ball like few guys can throw the ball. He can move like few guys can move at that position. He lacks elite mentals, but he does have
mentals.
Like if you told me you didn't know if you told me Brock was the last pick of the draft, but he athletically threw the ball like off platform down the field the way that Zach Wilson threw that deep ball at the end of the game 2 weeks ago, I think part of it is just the eye test. Like, God, why doesn't the ball explode out of his hands? I think that's part of it too. And those guys tend not to be top 5 picks. So even though I agree with it, like I think there is some legitimacy to it. But that said, Brock leads the league in passer rating. He leads the league in yards per attempt and completion. He leads the league in completion percentage. And when you go back to like this is why I pulled up the list of all the touchdown guys. Are we sure Brock couldn't end up in this conversation? Right now, he's got 18 touchdowns. That's That's Mahomes will
Oh.
play Monday night, but it's more than
Well,
Mahomes going into Monday night.
what if he throws 4 on Thursday night when the entire country's sitting at their house fucking
Yeah,
eating pie?
I don't think I don't want to get too far ahead. I don't think Brock's like out of it if this team goes 7-1 down the stretch, or I guess now 6-1 or 7-0.
I think Purdy's importance for this team is immeasurable because they're dramatically better on offense with him than they ever were with Jimmy Garoppolo, who was making $20-30 million. And, that's just what his value was. And he was solid for a period of time. I do think if I had a vote, like no different than the Tua thing, and I get the quarterback, I would give it to Tyreek Hill. Like, I think Christian McCaffrey is, equally as important. Like, I think he would be the MVP of this team. Though you keep playing like you did yesterday, obviously Christian's still an elite player, and he's going to be, I'm sure, a first or second team All-Pro running back, right? Like there's going to be awards, no doubt about it, Pro Bowler. I do think it's going to be hard to argue. You start having games like that. Did you see Christian's response when they're like, "Do you know that Brock had a perfect passer rating?" He's like, "Perfect passer rating." He's like, "Are you serious?" Like, because I think these guys are so in the moment and they know he's doing good, but I think sometimes you say it after the game. Do you understand what he just did? It's like when they asked Purdy, like, "Do you even know your completion percentage?" The one game where he went like 22 with 23. He's like, "No, I didn't even realize."
Well, it was the Cardinal game.
It was the Cardinal game.
Yeah, 20-21 or something.
I think you would realize it more if it's like the Eagles or the Ravens. You're like, we're pretty dialed right now. In a game like that, even a game like the Bucks, it's like,
yes.
I think it's more like Jesus, and you would get more credit because I do think, fair or not, people be like, "Oh, it's Tampa, they suck."
I agree. You
Not
can
suck,
win the MVP,
but it's like you don't get as much credit.
You play the Eagles you play the Ravens on Christmas night.
I even think Seattle. That's a pretty big game.
Yeah, because
on the sideline.
I agree. I think it applies to Brock for sure. It definitely applies to Christian. Christian
You
is
could
going to be there.
You could argue the 3 games: Seattle game, Eagle game, Ravens game. Because I would imagine the Eagle game, 2:25 Fox, Mountain Time. That thing's going to have 30 million people watching. I mean, that thing's going to be a fucking big game. That's where Fox goes. It's all worth us cutting that check to the NFL with the game. 3 games like this a year.
Yeah.
Eagles, Cowboys.
Dallas doesn't play.
Yeah.
Dallas doesn't play that day. Kansas City plays at night that day.
I can't imagine there are many games in that slot. Why would you even fucking waste it? It's probably Raiders, Chargers, probably throw away on CBS. That's no shot. It's when you play. It's when you play. Well, I bet. Look, let's look right now. That's not a shot. I'm giving Raiders respect. That's just when you guys play. Week 12. So you got 2:25. See, I was wrong. Is that next week?
It's the December 3rd.
Did I skip a week?
It's week 13.
Oh, okay. I was on week 12. So the Raiders play. Do the Raiders play that week? Bye. They're bye. There's 3 other games going. Denver at Houston, Cleveland at Los Angeles. I don't even care if you have YouTube TV in the 4 boxes. I think the Niner Eagle games
Cleveland at LA is on CBS, right?
Cleveland at LA is on Fox.
Oh,
so that sucks. That sucks.
If you're in that, so LA is not going to get Niners Eagles.
That sucks.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a big game.
Wow. All right. On that note, anything else to add? Anything we missed? Maybe. Other than the Cardinal game?
Raiders got to buy, man. Raiders got to buy.
That would have been too perfect. That would have been so perfect.
I had the Raiders got their own TV in my house yesterday. No, they didn't. They got a little box. Steeler game did.
All right. On that note, have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. And
Happy Turkey Day.
Happy Turkey Day.
Do kids get I wonder if they get the week off. I was trying to think. When I was like in junior high school,
I feel like you get like Wednesday.
Yeah. So you go to school Monday,
off.
Tuesday, Wednesday off.
Which, like, going to school Monday, Tuesday, Thanksgiving week was always the best. It's like you're not
college. Do you remember college? Did you go to school?
I feel like it was the same.
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday.
Talk about a mail-in.
Yeah. Oh, it's just
Well, the teachers kind of try in high school. In college, they don't give a shit. They mail it in more than you.
School age kids, like starting this week, is like their Super Bowl, right? You got this, you got Christmas, you got New Year's, you got the semester, quarter, semester, whatever ends. If you're in school right now, you are counting your starburst. You are loading up.
That's good.
You are loading up. All right. They're here.
No, that was 75th Amazon package of the week.
It's just a perfect way to end the podcast. Everyone, the guests are here. All right, everybody. Later.
Adios.